welcome students and teachers. My name is Jinya Huang. I am the Special Project Coordinator over at Teaching and Learning Division in the Visual and Performing Arts Department. And so today you'll be spending a little time with us at Dallas ISD's Racial Equity Office and a collaboration with all the departments on celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So today we are going to have a 30-minute webinar. This is going to be from 12 to 12:30, and we have restricted the chat function today, but you will be able to submit your questions and your Q&A using the Q&A function. That is the key that's on the bottom of the your screen there. And we are super fortunate to have an amazing interpreter with us today. So this session will be in Spanish. So Juan Crespo is our interpreter today, and we will let him jump on to share with you how to use that functionality.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Juan Crespo. Yo soy el intérprete que estará facilitando la reunión en español. Si desea escuchar esta presentación en español, en la parte inferior de la pantalla, en unos segundos, saldrá un icono del globo terráqueo, también conocido como el icono del mundo. Le dará clic ahí y seleccionará la opción en español. Si eso no funciona, puede regresar a la opción en inglés y volver a intentar la de español. Y si eso no funciona, a favor de dejarnos saber por el chat.
Perfect. Thank you, Juan, so much for jumping in and sharing the globe feature for interpretation today. And you all, we are so lucky to have someone really amazing to come and speak with us today. Welcome. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tiffany Moon, who is our guest feature, speaker today. So Tiffany Moon, MD, is a board-certified anesthesiologist, mother, wife, and fashion lover. She has published more than 36 original scripts, reviews, and book chapters, and speaks internationally on topics related to her research. So Tiffany loves to express her creativity and humor through fashion in her TikTok channels. She's a passionate supporter of animal rights, domestic violence awareness, and education. She currently serves on the board of directors for the Family Place. Recently, she has used her platform as one of Bravo's Real Housewives of Dallas to speak on racial justice. Dr. Moon resides right here in Dallas, Texas, with her husband, 4 children, 2 dogs, and a rescue bunny. Yay. Hi, Dr. Moon. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to jump right into it. And so that was really, that's quite an impressive bio. I was reading up on you and really just grateful to have you in our communities and, having such an amazing a person that is representing, the medical field. So what research did you do to prepare yourself for your career? Can you share a little bit of that with us?
Yeah, I wanted to become a doctor from a very early age. I would say, if you ask my mom, she'll say that I was telling her that I wanted to be a doctor when I was 6 years old. Oh. And I just loved science and math so much. And I started shadowing doctors in the community probably in my early teens. I would just reach out to family members that I knew were pediatricians or family doctors or emergency medicine doctors. And I said, hey, like Friday or Saturday, can I come to work with you and see what it is that you do? So that early on I had exposure and I understood what I was getting myself into.
How did you brave up to ask that?
I just asked everyone, my church aunties that had connections to physicians. Back then there was no Facebook or Instagram. So it's sort of just, you call people and you sort of call someone else from church or somebody else. And I just kept going until I found someone who would let me shadow them.
That's fantastic. And so what was it that, when you were doing that, and really just like throughout your career, what was your first win that made you confident that you were doing the right thing? And so it wasn't just, following this thinking that, oh, I want to be a doctor, but like, what made you feel like that was like it?
When I started shadowing one person in particular over the length of some time, I started to understand the special patient-doctor interaction. And I made some relationships with patients. And they said to me, even though I was young and I didn't have any medical knowledge, they just said, thank you for listening to me and being kind and trying to help me with my problems. Because a lot of time people just want to be listened to. They don't want to be interrupted or told something while they're trying to tell a story. And I really understood the value of having that strong patient-doctor relationship. And I felt in my heart, like, this is it. Like, this is what I was meant to do.
Oh, wow. So that early on that you were able to interact with the patients in that way. And so listening skill is also a part of that expertise, right? Okay, so like getting the training and having not just signing up for the Hippocratic Oath and saying, okay, that's it. Like I just can, showing up as a doctor, but also having those listening skills. And so the soft skills are just as important as the hard skills. So, wow, thank you for sharing that. So once you got to practicing in your career, was there something else that kind of gave you like that gut instinct that, okay, I'm like definitely chosen the right career and this is it?
Yeah, I mean, when I started practicing medicine, both as a medical student and then in my residency and then becoming an attending physician, I always looked forward to going to work. I never on Sunday was like, oh man, I got to go to work on Monday. It's such a drag. I looked forward to going to work. I went back to work 6 weeks after I had my twins because I wanted to, because I missed my patients, because I missed practicing medicine. And I think, this might be a little cliche, but when you find your passion in life, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like a calling. And when you love what you do and you receive good feedback from, for me, not only my patients, but the medical students and medical students and residents that I mentor and teach, when I get that feedback, it makes me feel good.
Wow. Okay. So that is really great to hear. And that really kind of honed you in on your why and how you're serving your purpose. That's really beautiful, Dr. Moon.
Thank you.
So, oh, I really love that. So what made you pick anesthesia?
Anesthesiology is one of those medical specialties that nobody knows about. People are like, oh, so you put people to sleep for surgery. Okay. You turn a few knobs, inject a few medications. And I'm like, no, it is far more complicated than that. I deal with the sickest patients who have a lot of medical problems coming in for big surgeries. I work at Dallas County's public hospital. So we have a lot of patients with advanced medical problems, people who were involved in terrible trauma accidents like car accidents and physical trauma. And so this is serious work. And I just love anesthesia because you sort of get to be the pilot of the plane, so to speak. And I've always had a little bit of obsessive compulsive tendencies. That's just who I am. I like to be very specific and very exact. And anesthesia suits my personality. And I love being in the operating room.
Oh, that's beautiful. My mom actually passed from cancer, and when she had multiple myeloma, her doctors were all at UT Southwestern where you practice, and so and that practice of what you're talking about, the precision, you're just particular, and we want you to be particular and precise and expert at what you do. And so we always really appreciate it, and that precision that in caring for your patients. So thank you for that. I really love that. So I wanted to ask you, when you were kind of diving into this, did you go through any kind of like career mistakes that gave you a big lesson? Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, on the way to medical school, there were so many hurdles to jump over. It was like you have to do really well on your academic classes. You have to take the MCAT and do really well on that. You have to apply and interview, and it's all these hurdles. And for some people, I think when they think about all those hurdles that are ahead of them, they think, I can't possibly do that. It's too much. I don't have it in me. I can't do it. And I always say, like, how do you climb to the top of a mountain? One step at a time. Nobody got lifted to the top of the mountain, at least no one that I know who did it fairly. You climb it, you climb your career and you climb your life by taking one step at a time. And yes, while you're taking those steps up the mountain, sometimes you fall down. And guess what? That's okay. The important part is that you pick yourself back up. And sometimes you slip a step down back the mountain. And guess what? That's okay too, because the point is that you get back up and keep ascending the mountain. You cannot let those failures and setbacks keep you from continuing to climb the mountain if that is truly what you want for your life.
Thank you for giving us that inspiration, because so often we talk about the successes of being Asian American and having to be perfect all the time, but perfection doesn't exist. And I love how you just framed that that framework of the concept that failure is a part of, it's basically on your way to success, and that it's necessary to make mistakes along the way in order to learn and become better at what you do. That is so inspirational. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And it really validates a lot of our experiences. And I think that kind of leads us to, these thoughts about, well, so you love your job, and there are all these amazing things about, being a doctor. And so at what point, like, how do you avoid being just like complacent and go, oh, okay, status quo, this is good, I've read at a comfortable spot, and how do you avoid being stagnant in that spot, and how do you continue to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. A year ago, was working a full-time job with young children, a wonderful family life. And some people would say, you've made it. Like, what else is there? And I said, there's so much out there. I've struggled with so much adversity in my life, being an immigrant to this country when I was 6 years old, learning English when I was 6 years old, growing up, without any affluence, my parents fighting for every single thing they've ever had. And I said to myself, I have to tell this story because I think it might inspire some other young women and men to do things that they're scared of doing. Because we're all scared of doing something, because what if we fail? What if people see us fail? What if we're embarrassed? But you have to get over that fear of maybe failing or maybe being embarrassed, because you have to just try. You have to go for it. I would rather try and fail at something than never have tried.
That's fantastic. That is a great push to try and even just, starting something small, and being brave enough to share your stories and to overcome those adversities. And that's tough to hear sometimes, because it's so uncomfortable, right? And it's painful to watch, like, our parents. I grew up in Taipei, Taiwan. I came to the States when I was 13, and I actually didn't speak a lick of English when I came, and that was hard. English is as my second language, and there were so many things that, we grew up poor on a farm, in the South in Taiwan, and going up north was to access education. And that is amazing that your parents did so much, and that is the immigrant diaspora, right, experience. And so we we hear you and we see you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so that kind of leads us to the next thought in this. And so, going through all this, what is the biggest risk that you've actually taken to like get to where you are?
I mean, I would say that the biggest risk to my career that I've had for almost a decade now was sort of joining a reality TV show that has nothing to do with medicine. And I had been asked by my friend to sort of join the cast for some time. And I always thought, no, thank you. That's not what I'm about. And then I thought about it some more and I thought, if doing that will allow me to embolden my voice so that I can tell my story, so that I can inspire others, then I'll do it. That's the end goal.
Wow. Wow. That is really powerful because it's such a path least taken, right? And for you to step up and say, well, this is how I'm going to use my voice. And I've had the platform of medicine, but what if I use mass media to amplify the voices of women, of Asian American women, of our people, and really celebrate our heritage and in a different way. That's really interesting that you use that as your megaphone. I appreciate that. Thanks. So then that kind of brings us to this thought of, okay, you've had all these, you've kind of dabbled in different aspects of what people say are career paths, right? What was the best advice that you had actually gotten as career advice, and whether that's, in media, in medicine, whatnot? Can you share a little bit of that with us?
Yeah, I would say the best advice I've gotten was probably from my parents. And they always said, you have to put in the hard work. There is no substitute for hard work, and don't take shortcuts because you're only doing yourself a disservice at the end of the day. You might get away with it like in the short-term period, but in the long, you'll just hurt yourself. And they just taught me you got to work hard no matter what it is, whether you're studying to be a doctor or you're on a reality TV show. Like, you need to show up on time, be respectful to others, like the simple rules that we learn in kindergarten and first grade. Treat others how you want to be treated, be polite. It's like we teach it to first graders, and I'm like, can we have a refresher class for adults?
Right.
I think some adults need a refresher course.
Right. And my mom always used to say, be a good neighbor, do the right thing, and practice compassion, kindness and compassion every day. And that is exactly it. Thank you. Thank you for reaffirming that, for sure. And so talent is not gonna cut it. You got to put in the hard work. You got to invest in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. So then that, kind of makes us think, well, what advice would you give your younger self to our students here at Dallas ISD?
I would say no matter what kind of career you want to pursue, you should make efforts early on to try to shadow someone in that specialty. For example, if you want to be a fashion designer, well, then you should try to make connections with local fashion designers and see if you can go shadow them and be an intern. Almost anyone I know who is running a small business will be glad to take an intern, probably an unpaid position. But what you learn in knowledge and experience is much more worth it than making a few bucks an hour. You have to put in the hard work and you have to do the research because you want to make sure that that's actually what you want to pursue. And how would you actually know that unless you sort of go and do it? What if you start doing it and figure out like, oh, I don't really like that. So start early. That way you can pick a career option that you really are passionate about. And then you can sort of track yourself into being successful for that career path.
That's great advice. And so I see that we've got some questions that have come in from our students from that, from all your amazing advice. So the first one is, how do you know if someone is really asleep before they get operated on?
Well, we have a lot of monitors to tell us about the anesthetics that the patients are receiving and their heart rate and their blood pressure and their depth of anesthesia. So I think it might be a common misperception that you don't get enough anesthesia and then you're paralyzed in the middle of surgery and awake and you can feel everything. That is a phenomenon called awareness under anesthesia, but I think it has been popularized in the media much more than it actually happens in person.
Thank you for busting that myth, Dr. Moon. So speaking of that, that is a scary thought. And so we're grateful that doesn't happen. And so that kind of brings us to that point. Okay, that's what is like the scariest thing that you've ever had to encounter like at work? What's happened at work?
Oh, well, I work in the operating room like 100% of the time. I don't do obstetric anesthesia, so I don't have any pregnant patients unless they're also trauma patients, which happens rarely. And sometimes in the operating room, unexpected things can happen. Patients can have massive blood loss, and all of a sudden I'm giving multiple units of blood. Sometimes patients become allergic to a medication that we're giving them that we didn't know and they didn't know were allergic to, and all of a sudden we have to perform chest compressions on them. It's unfortunate to say, but I have had patients die on the operating room table because they were very, very sick when they came in, and we did the best that we could. But you know, we've lost a few patients, and that really hit me hard. Those were very bad days when I came home from work.
How do you cope with that kind of trauma?
That's a good question. I think every patient you lose sort of stays with you a little bit, especially the ones that you thought were going to make it. And then they sort of take a turn for the worse when you thought they were doing better. Those always affect me a little bit more. In some ways, I hate to say it, but I do have to compartmentalize my work a little bit. When I leave the hospital, I sort of have to leave Dr. Tiffany at the hospital, because when I come home, I need to be on for my children. Anyone with children will know that they don't really care if mommy had a bad day. They are climbing on me. They want to go outside. The dogs are jumping around. And it's like, I can't let those failures at work come home with me, or else I would be a sad, soppy mess half the time. So at some point I have to, I have to leave Dr. Tiffany at the hospital sometimes.
Gotcha. Good mix of professionalism and personal life. Okay. So what language do you speak? What heritage would you identify with the most?
I immigrated from China and I speak Mandarin, although it's very poor.
No. And some of the students were wondering if you ever get to use your Chinese at work.
I don't, because we don't have a large Mandarin speaking population at work. But I did my residency at the University of California, San Francisco, and they do have a large Asian population. So once in a while, we would have like an elderly Asian person who didn't speak English, and I would be able to explain the anesthesia to them in my very broken Chinese. But here, I wish that the language I spoke was Spanish, because a lot of my patients speak Spanish, and I never took Spanish in high school. I really wish that I had. I took Latin, which, you know, is a dead language, and it helped me very much on my SATs because it is the root of many words that we use in English. but I wish I spoke Spanish. I've tried to take medical Spanish before and I can't roll my R's and it just doesn't sound right.
没关系。
对不起，
Yeah,
对不起。
你国语讲得很棒。We were just saying that it's not a problem because Dr. Moon is awesome at so many different things that it's quite okay. And besides, we have Juan here who's helping us.
Yes,
So,
can Juan just follow me around all day long?
Right? We would all need that. That would be super helpful. So
Yeah.
we have another really great question that just came in is, Dr. Moon, what is a challenge that you think you face that male doctors don't face?
That is a good question. I think the burden of homework and child work mostly falls on a woman, even if both the husband and wife have full-time jobs. Those responsibilities, most of the time in most families, still fall more to the woman. So I am the one who coordinates the kids, you know, pickup times and camps and after school activities, and makes sure that the house doesn't run out of toilet paper. Also at work, I think there are sometimes these microaggressions against women where, you know, when I'm running a code in the operating room and I'm like, you go get the defibrillator pads, you pull up a milligram of epinephrine, you know, they're like, oh, she's being so bossy. And I'm like, no, we don't say that, because have you ever called a man bossy? I don't think so. Men, when they take control of a situation and sort of start running a code, so to speak, they're seen as taking control of the situation and you know, doing the right thing. But then a woman, when she does the exact same behavior, is seen as maybe like a little bit aggressive or not as warm or called bossy. And I think those are sort of microaggressions that occur in the workplace that we need to be cognizant of.
Yeah, no, thank you. We're going to embrace you as, and thank you for your leadership. That's what we're going to say about that. So the last question today is, what are your thoughts on the recent Stop Asian Hate movement, and how have current events affected you as a doctor and as a person?
Wow, that's such an insightful question. It breaks my heart when I turn on the news and see that a lot of the Asian American community, often senselessly and often targeted toward our elderly, which in my culture, you know, we like revere our elderly. And so for me to see the attacks on them for no reason, it really breaks my heart. I always say that we should all lead with love, regardless of what your race, gender, sexual orientation, any of that. We must lead with love. We cannot have this sort of hate in our hearts in this country in 2021. It's just not acceptable. And so what I'm trying to do is just bring awareness to the topic, have people talking about it, educate people, give them resources. I think that's a really good starting place for people to understand one another and to be able to accept other people who are different from them.
Yes, lead with love, and thank you for sharing your amazing stories. Thank you for sharing your career path, and we are so grateful that you know, you're in the field of medicine and being a face for the AAPI communities, and really for your leadership on the social justice front. So I cannot thank you enough for your time, but our time is up. So thank you again, Dr. Tiffany Moon, for all that you do. We appreciate you. Thank you, Juan. Thank you all of the Dallas ISD students and teachers and staff and everyone who joined us today to celebrate AAPI Heritage Month. And we will continue these going forward. And thank you again so much for jumping in the discussion and so willingly and in serving our communities together.
Thank you so much for having me.